Welcome back to Street Scores. It's your boy Rico giving y'all that 2018 Week 5 review edition of Redskins Report. Here, I analyze the team as a whole on both sides of the ball and also break down each player's performance in the game as well. It's time to get into this analysis. Let's get it. We embarrassed ourselves on Monday Night Football for the whole world to see. We lost to the Saints 43-19 in New Orleans in front of 73,028 people. We are now 2-2 on the season, still sitting alone atop the NFC East since everybody lost last week, and we are now 17-10 against the Saints all time. But y'all already know I'm about to hit y'all with these stats the entire episode. Same thing every time, but now it's time to get to the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starting with the offense, who converted 4 of his 13 third down. To hit y'all with some more random stats, after week 5, our offense is now 6th in the NFL in average time of possession with 31 minutes 49 seconds per game, and 3rd in the NFL in rushing attempts per game with 29.3. And then we've fallen so far in other rankings that it's too ugly to even tell y'all about them. Alex Smith completed 23 of his 39 passes for 275 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception, for an ugly 69.9 passer rating. This was definitely his worst game as a Redskin and probably his worst game in years. He played in all of the offense's 61 snaps. On the ground, he only gained 7 yards on 2 rushes, but one went for a first down on 4th and 1 and the other went for a rushing touchdown. But throwing wise, he only had a 7.05 yards per attempt average. Under pressure, Alex Smith threw for 3.9 yards per attempt and had a 6.5 QB rating. He threw the deep ball more, which is what we wanted, but it just didn't work out. A very dark game. Alex Smith was inaccurate at times. He made some poor decisions. It's a game I know he can't wait to forget and make up for. Overall, terrible game from Alex Smith, but he also didn't get a lot of help. The offensive line let Nas down. And speaking of the O-line, terrible game from everybody but Brandon Sheriff. Alex Smith was sacked 3 times, which is the 3rd time this season he's been sacked 3 times. The O-line allowed a pressure rate of 28%, which isn't necessarily bad, but it isn't what you want. Every offensive lineman allowed at least 1 QB pressure. Also, the O-line didn't run block well at all, which led to a 39-yard rushing game with only 6 of them coming before contact. But at least, this is the first game all season where all 5 starting offensive linemen played in every offensive snap. This was also the first game none of them committed a penalty. But let's get into each individual lineman going from left to right. Trent Williams played on all 61 offensive snaps and had a bad game. Allowed a tie for team high 3 QB pressures, with one of them being a sack fumble. This is his first sack allowed in 18 games. Dark day for Trent. Second year Chase Roulier played in all 61 offensive snaps. He allowed 2 QB pressures and also struggled in the run game. Tony Bergstrom struggled the least in the passing game. He was the only offensive lineman to either not give up a sack or multiple pressures, but he was not able to run block well. Brandon Sheriff played in all 61 snaps, and other than the time he let Sheldon Rankins gingerly walk unblocked to the backfield for a sack, which is his only allowed sack of the year, he actually had a pretty good game. The only lineman that can say that. He blocked well in the passing game, other than that play, and blocked very well in the running game. Pro Football Focus rated him the highest offensive lineman in Week 5. Morgan Moses played in 61 snaps and had a miserable day. He allowed a sack and a team-high 3 QB pressures. It was just ugly for him out there. Ty Nsekhe came in on 2 snaps as the 6th offensive lineman and did nothing noteworthy. Casey was active but didn't play at all, not even on special teams. And Jerron Christian was inactive as usual. Now on to the running backs. Adrian Peterson only played in 13 snaps. He came into this game with an ankle injury and then sustained a knee and shoulder injury during the course of the game. Neither are severe though. Alex Smith set him up for failure on that first drive when he threw that screen pass as late as possible, which led to Adrian Peterson's knee getting hyperextended. He only had 6 yards on 4 carries, which is a 1.5 yards per carry average. Tragic. His longest rush was for 4 yards and went for his only first down game. Even though he struggled in the run game, he contributed in the passing game with 2 catches on 3 targets for 36 yards, 2 first downs, and 3 broken tackles. Chris Thompson played in 40 snaps. He took advantage of his increased snap count and led the team in targets with 8, receptions with 6, carries with 8, total touches with 18, rushing yards with a measly 17, yards after contact with 18, yards after catch with 42, and first downs gained with 3. He had a good game overall, but only had 2.1 yards per carry. And he also surprisingly had one of his worst blocking games I've seen him have in a while. He allowed 2 QB pressures. The Capri Bibbs only played in 8 snaps. He rushed for 9 yards on 4 carries. He also scored his first career rushing touchdown. Ryan Anderson came in at fullback for 2 of Bibbs' rushes. At the goal line, the Redskins have now scored on 4 of Ryan Anderson's 5 fullback snaps. That's crazy. And also, Samaje Perine was inactive. Now to the tight ends. Jordan Reed played in 39 snaps but was only targeted 2 times, which is a season low for him. One target was thrown behind him and went incomplete. The other was caught for 21 yards. I don't know why he was barely utilized, especially since they claim him to be one of the best tight ends in the league. He's a walk-in mismatch. Too big for defensive backs, too fast for linebackers. He should always receive more than 2 targets in a game. 34 years old, Vernon Davis played in 26 snaps. He caught 2 of his 3 targets for 15 yards and 2 first downs. He was also barely utilized in this game, but at least he made his presence felt with some pretty good run blocking. Not great, but better than usual from him. Second year Jeremy Sprinkle played in 11 snaps. He blocked pretty well for 6 of them and ran routes on 5 of them. He wasn't targeted. As a matter of fact, he hasn't been targeted in his over 100 snaps this year. The wide receivers had another down day overall, the typical storyline of this 2018 season. With Josh Doctson out with a minor heel injury, Jamison Crowder led all of the wide receivers in snaps for the first time this year with 52. He tied for a team high targets with 8 and caught 4 of them for his season high in yards with 55 and 3 first downs. Pretty decent day, but he is still averaging career lows in receptions per game with 3.3, yards per route ran with 1, and yards per game with 33.5. Maurice Harris played in 49 snaps in his first game of the year, which is also a career high for him. He had a team high 8 targets and 3 deep targets with 3 receptions for 47 receiving yards. His 42-yard catch was the longest of his career and also the longest Redskin play of the day. There was another play he would have had a touchdown on if Alex Smith didn't throw a late ball to him, which led to an interception. Harris was open, but Alex Smith was uncharacteristically late. But I like what I saw from Maurice Harris. I hope he can stay healthy because he shows some promise. Paul Richardson played in 42 snaps. He caught 4 of his 5 targets for 50 yards and 2 first downs. One of those first downs was a great high-pointed contested catch that went for 23 yards on a 3rd down. He also led the team in average yards of separation at catch point with 4.4. He leads the receiving group in receiving yards by 47 with 181 total yards, and he's tied with Crowder for receiving first downs with 7. Brian Quick played in 12 snaps. He had a hard day of separating and blocking, but he did catch his lone target for 6 yards. Michael Floyd somehow started but only played in 9 snaps. 5 of those snaps were route running and the other 4 were run blocking, but he was never targeted. Overall, the offense had a tragic day. Alex Smith was inconsistent, inaccurate, and late on some throws. The offensive line didn't give Alex Smith much time to throw or the running backs any room to run. And from there, the whole ship fell apart. Receivers and tight ends were getting separation but didn't receive too many opportunities to make plays. And the offense was just terrible on 3rd downs. The offense had a total of 18 first downs, 283 yards, 1 turnover, and 2 touchdowns. The offense performed poorly, but the defense also had a tragic day. Let's get to them. Overall, the defense played sad. The Redskins allowed the Packers to score 4 touchdowns on their 5 red zone trips. They allowed 98 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, and 8 rushing first downs. Without Niels, the Saints actually had over 100 yards rushing. They also allowed 349 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 15 passing first downs, and allowed Drew Brees to break the all-time passing yards record by a large margin. He only needed 201, they gave him 349. They also allowed 5 of the Saints' 9 first downs to be converted. The defensive pass rush only pressured Drew Brees on 6 of his 32 dropbacks, an 18.8% pressure rate, which is by far the worst so far this season, but at least they got 2 sacks. Also, after this sad game, the Redskins defense is now 10th in the NFL in points per game allowed with 21.8, 5th in the NFL in yards allowed per game with 320.3, and 10th in the NFL in yards allowed per play with 5.34. Now let's talk about the trenches. Rookie Daron Payne had a great game in 51 snaps. He's the only defensive lineman I can say that about. Really one of the only defensive players I can say that about. He had a career-high 3 solo tackles with a total of 4 tackles, with one of them being a tackle for loss. He also forced his first fumble of his career that should have easily been recovered if Pernell McPhee wasn't so passive at getting to it. Payne also forced an incomplete pass from Drew Brees with a QB hit, and he also got home and recorded one of the team's only 2 sacks. Pro Football Focus rated him the best performer on the Redskins defense in Week 5. Second-year Alabama Jonathan Allen played in 55 snaps and had a meh day, leaning towards bad more so than good. Nothing really bad, but also nothing great. He tied a career high in total tackles with 5, but all of them were assists. He didn't generate a single pressure on any of his 29 rushing snaps, which is his first time not generating a single pressure in his career. He didn't look like that best player in college from 2 years ago against the Saints. Matt Ioannidis finally got a lot of snaps with 31, but he didn't have a good game. He also didn't record a single pressure, which is only the second time in his career that he has failed to do so. The only other time was the game he got hurt in. This is also the first game Ioannidis didn't get a sack all year. He had 3 total tackles, with one of them being a solo, but the Saints gained an average of 4.33 yards on all of his tackles. Ziggy Hood played in 11 snaps and didn't do anything noteworthy. Bad game from him. And Ricky Tim Settle only played in 8 snaps and also contributed nothing. And the beast waiting to be unleashed, Caleb Brantley, was inactive once again, and I don't understand why Ziggy plays over him. Now to the outside linebackers. Ryan Kerrigan played in a low 48 snaps, but he finally had a decent day, and he finally recorded his first sack of the season. Tragic. Terrible that it took this long. He also had his first multiple tackle game of the season with 3 solos. Sadly, his sack didn't matter because Monte's stupid self got a personal foul penalty on that 3rd down stop, which led to a 1st down and eventually points. But Ryan Kerrigan also had a QB hurry, and again, he was held a lot throughout the course of the game, and yet none of them penalties were called. But that was a common theme on Monday. Saints got all of their calls, and the Redskins didn't get many. The NFL said, Drew Brees, go and get this record on Monday Night Football for everybody to see. And the Redskins just happened to be the victims of a game that seemed so one-sided by the refs. Preston Smith played in 54 snaps and again didn't have much of an impact. Unlike Ryan Kerrigan, he did not record his first sack. He also didn't get a QB hurry for the first time since Week 1. But he did have 2 QB pressures. He also had 4 total tackles, with 2 of them being solos. And he batted down a Drew Brees pass. And we need more from you if you plan on getting paid at the end of this season, Preston. Pernell McPhee played in a season high but still low 18 snaps, but didn't manage to record a single pressure for the first time all season. He missed an easy opportunity to recover a Daron Payne fumble, but he redeemed himself by recovering a fumble late in the 2nd quarter. And it's funny because his only tackle of the game was when he touched an already down Mark Ingram, who stole the fumble recovery from him. Just tragic. Ryan Anderson only played in 11 defensive snaps and didn't generate any pressure on his 3 pass rushing snaps, but he did make 2 run game stops. He had a pretty decent game. Pro Football Focus gave him the 3rd highest grade of the Redskins defense in Week 5. But on to the off-ball linebacker group. They had a pretty good day overall again. Mason Foster had the best day in 66 snaps and played well in run stopping and did very well in the passing game. He led the team in total tackles with 10, solo tackles with 6, assisted tackles with 4, and defensive stops with 4. But he did miss 1 tackle on a running play. He leads the team in total tackles and is 4th in the league. In the passing game, he had his best performance statistically of the year. He allowed all 3 of his targets to be caught, but they only combined for a total of 1 yard. Good day from him. Zach Brown played in 58 snaps, which is a season high for him. He had a decent tackling day with 6 total tackles, with 4 of them being solos, but he had a horrible day in coverage. He allowed all 5 of his targets to be caught for 69 yards and 3 first downs. He allowed the most receptions, receiving yards, and receiving first downs out of any Redskins defensive player. He also had an ugly horse collar penalty in the red zone, which of course led to points. That's the theme of this whole day. Penalties leading to points. Josh Harvey Clemens played in 8 snaps and didn't have much of an impact besides 1 tackle. Zach Vigil only played on special teams, and high potential Sean Dion Hamilton also only played on special teams. Now the cornerbacks. They had a bad day overall. Josh Norman, who had one of the worst days, played in 61 defensive snaps and was benched heading into the 2nd half. He looked pretty bad out there against the Saints, I ain't gonna lie. It was bad from the start. On the first Saints passing play of the game, Josh Norman held Michael Thomas on a 3rd down stop, which led to a 1st down and a touchdown 4 plays later. And the Saints never lost the lead after this. Josh Norman also fell for a play action fake and allowed Josh Hill to be wide open for an easy 1-yard touchdown throw. He also allowed the 62-yard record-breaking Traquan Smith touchdown reception. This was the 2nd straight game that a Josh Norman coverage bust led to a touchdown of over 60 yards. Josh Norman now leads the team in touchdowns allowed with 3, receiving yards allowed with 215, and passer rating allowed with 156.3. But I can talk about how Josh Norman has struggled. You can't, Michael Thomas. We better not hear anything else from you about these Skins players from here on out. Quentin Dunbar played in 58 snaps and also had a bad game. He allowed 5 of his 6 targets to be caught for 48 yards and 3 first downs, but he did tie season-high total tackles with 6, even though 4 of those tackles came on receptions he allowed. And he had a missed tackle. He defended a pass targeted for Michael Thomas in the end zone, but then he held Michael Thomas on the very next play, which soon led to a Saints touchdown. Again, same thing. Penalties leading to points. Fabian Moreau played in 44 snaps and had by far the least bad game amongst the Redskins corners. He had a pretty decent game. He allowed 4 receptions on 4 targets to be caught for 32 yards and 2 first downs. This was the least amount of yards allowed by a Redskins defensive back in the game. He had 5 tackles, with 3 of them coming on receptions he allowed, but he also forced a fumble for the 2nd straight game. He is a playmaker. I told y'all about him. Fabian Moreau is the only Redskin corner to not allow a touchdown this year. He has allowed almost 100 fewer yards than Norman and Dunbar, and he also leads the team in yards per coverage snap allowed with 0.53, which is tied for 6th best in the NFL. Rookie Greg Stroman came in and replaced Josh Norman at the beginning of the second half and got exposed something so filthy. It was the darkest hour for him out there. He only played in 5 snaps, got toe up, and got sent right back to the sideline for Josh Norman. Before he was sat down, he allowed Ben Watson to catch an 8-yard first down. Then the very next play, he allowed Trey Quinn to catch a 35-yard touchdown. He allowed 43 yards in just 3 coverage snaps. Pro Football Focus gave him a hilarious 27.6 grade. If I came back home with a 28% in any class, I would have just ran away from home before anybody else even saw the grade. That's crazy. Danny Johnson only played on special teams, and Adonis Alexander only was inactive as usual. Now the safeties. They had a pretty off day overall. DJ Swearinger played in all of the Redskins' 66 defensive snaps, and he allowed his only target to be caught for 46 yards on a 2nd and 17, which led to a Mark Ingram rushing touchdown 2 plays later. He had a season-high 5 total tackles and 5 solos, but he also missed a tackle. Other than that one horrible play, he had a pretty decent day, but that one play was just so bad. Meanwhile, second-year Monte Nicholson, who played in 61 snaps, had probably his worst game in his career. He allowed a career-worst 54 receiving yards. He gave up 2 first down receptions for over 20 yards each, and both of them were on 2nd and long plays. It looked like the Saints were like, oh, so we are in 2nd and long situation? Where's Monte? He'll bail us out. And speaking of bailouts, he also took a bad angle on the Drew Brees yard record-breaking touchdown pass to Traquan Smith I mentioned earlier. And his worst bailout of the game came after Ryan Kerrigan got his first sack of the season on 3rd down. I repeat, 3rd down. Monte went and got himself an unnecessary roughness penalty, which gave them a first down blessing and of course led to a touchdown, which put the Redskins down 10. He received a 28.5 grade from Football Focus, which is also run away from home worthy. DeShazer Everett played on a season high 12 defensive snaps, with 10 of them coming on running plays. He did nothing noteworthy. Kenny Ladler only played in special teams, and Troy Apke on the screen was inactive as usual. Overall, the defense played terribly. They limited Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas like I hoped they would in the game preview, but then they just let everybody else go crazy. Fabian Moreau, Mason Foster, and Deron Payne were the only people that looked like they came to play. Everybody else was looking hurt out there, or just simply didn't matter. I need Dunbar to get back into Week 1 form. I need Norman to get back into 2015 form. I need Zach Brown, Ryan Kerrigan, and Preston Smith from last year. And I believe Jonathan Allen and Matt Ioannidis just had bad days. I have faith in them bouncing back. All in all, the defense got lit up, and the worst of it all, it was on Monday Night Football for everybody to see. But we usually go out sad on Monday nights anyway, so I'm not very surprised, even though this team is very talented on paper. Now Dustin Hopkins, he made both of his field goals, one from 37 yards and another from 53. 3 of his kickoffs went for touchbacks. The other 2 were returned to the 26-yard line and the 22-yard line. Nothing major. And Tressway had a decent day. He managed to pin the Saints within their own 20-yard line once. But that's it for this episode. Thanks for the view. Tragic loss. One word to describe it. Tragedy. Or like everybody hates Chris, tragic. The offense struggled. One of our strengths, the offensive line, got mutilated. Alex Smith had his worst game as a Redskin. The defense got lit up. Fabian Moreau, Deron Payne, and Mason Foster were the only defensive players who came ready to play against the Saints. How do y'all feel about this tragic loss against the Saints? Do y'all feel like Jay Gruden is primarily responsible for the Redskins' inconsistencies? Who was your favorite player on Monday? Who was your most disappointing player on Monday? Let me know in the comments. Be heard. And make sure y'all Dolemite fake punch that like button, favorite, subscribe, I'll subscribe back, and most importantly, comment and share. And again, thank y'all for the support. I'll catch y'all later. I'm out.